Disclaimer: this story is fictional. All characters and events are imaginary. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. Reproduction is strictly prohibited. Welcome to a new story. You can watch us every day. A new story is released daily at 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Enjoy your watching, and feel free to tell us your feedback. The boy had a voice. The physicians confirmed this annually: the vocal cords functional, the throat unobstructed, the particular neurological pathways that speech required intact and operational. The hardware was present. The software had shut down. 3 years of functional vocal apparatus producing no language, no vocalization, no the particular, human. I am using my voice to connect sound that speech existed to produce. Prince Sigurd Stahl was 6 years old and had not spoken since the afternoon. He was 3 and standing in the corridor outside his mother's chamber when the door was open, and the door being open meant the 3-year-old saw what happened inside. And what happened inside was the thing that shut the software down. Queen Thyra's assassination was not political in the way assassinations were supposed to be: political, strategic, targeted, the particular calculated removal that power structures produced when the removal served a structural purpose. Thyra's assassination was collateral. The target was the king. The king was not in the chamber. The queen was. The assassin did not adjust. The assassin proceeded because the assassin's employer had paid for a body, and the employer's investment required a return, and the return, in the absence of the intended body, was the available body. The available body was Thyra. The corridor contained the witness. The witness was 3. Alpha King Vidar Stahl survived because his schedule placed him in the military wing during the 17 minutes that the assassination occupied. 17 minutes between the assassin's entry and the guard's response. 17 minutes during which a queen died and a prince watched from a corridor, and the watching sealed the voice that the watching's content exceeded the voice's capacity to contain. The voice did not close gradually. The voice closed completely. The particular, total, system-wide shutdown that trauma produced in children whose developmental stage did not contain the processing architecture that the trauma required. 3-year-olds do not possess the cognitive infrastructure to process a parent's violent death. The infrastructure's absence, when the processing is demanded anyway, produces the shutdown. The shutdown is the protection. The protection is the silence. 3 years of silence. 3 years of the palace's resources directed at the silenced speech therapists, child psychologists, the particular, comprehensive, every available intervention medical apparatus that the Crown's funding could mobilize. The mobilizing produced reports. The reports produced recommendations. The recommendations produced interventions. The interventions produced nothing. The silence continued with the particular, impervious, I am not accessible through your method's quality, that trauma-based silence, carried when the silence was a fortress rather than a symptom, and that fortress's walls were built from the specific material that the trauma provided, and the material was stronger than the interventions, because the material was the child's own construction, and the child's own construction could not be dismantled from outside. Fortresses are dismantled from inside. The inside was the child's. The child was not dismantling. Then a woman came to mend broken pottery, and the fortress found its door. 3 years. Functional hardware, shutdown software. Every intervention failed because the silence was a fortress built from the inside. Fortresses are dismantled from inside. The child was not dismantling. Then a woman arrived to mend broken pottery, and the fortress found a door it didn't know it had. Chapter 1. Cinny home traveled with a cart, a kiln, and 11 kinds of adhesive. The cart carried her between villages on a circuit that covered the northern territories in approximately 4 months, and that the covering repeated 3 times annually. The perpetual, seasonal, I am always somewhere rotation that itinerant tradespeople maintained, and that the maintaining was the life, and the life was the cart, and the kiln, and the mending. The mending was ceramics, pottery, porcelain, the particular, fragile. These things break category of household objects that every home contained, and that every home's containing produced, through the physics of daily use, the breaking that daily use inflicted on fragile things. Cups cracked. bowls chipped, the ceremonial plate that a grandmother carried from the old country split along a fault line that decades of temperature cycling had been preparing, and that the splitting converted the plate from a functional object into two pieces of a memory. The two pieces arrived at Signy's cart with the particular, careful, wrapped in cloth quality that broken precious things were transported, with the wrapping communicating not the object's value but the breaker's grief. The grief was the commission. The mending was the response. Signy's methodology was not concealment. Standard ceramic repair hid the damage, filled the crack, painted the surface, produced the particular, invisible, you cannot tell it was broken quality that conventional repair aimed for. Signy's methodology was the opposite. The mending was visible. Gold powder adhesive tracing the crack lines. Silver compound filling the chips. The particular, deliberate. The repair is the decoration philosophy that transformed the damage from something hidden into something featured. The crack was not erased. The crack was illuminated. The illumination said, "This object broke." The breaking is part of its history. The history is not concealed, the history is the beauty. The beauty is the mending made visible. The philosophy was not universally appreciated. Some clients wanted invisible repair, the crack gone, the memory of the breaking eliminated, the object restored to its pre-damage state as though the damage never occurred. Signy declined these commissions, not from rigidity, from conviction. Invisible repair is a lie, the declining's explanation. The object broke. Pretending it did not disrespects the breaking and the object and the person who cared enough about the object to bring it to a mender. The caring deserves the truth. The truth is gold in the cracks. 33 years old. Omega, unmarried, the itinerant's particular relationship status, which was the roads, and which the roads was the choosing, and the choosing was the life, and the life did not include the stationary. Signy's hands were her identity, the particular, trained, 12 years of apprenticeship and practice quality that the hands carried. The hands could feel a hairline fracture through a ceramic wall, could assess a break's severity through touch before the eyes confirmed what the fingers already knew, could apply the gold powder adhesive with the particular, microscopic. The line must be precise accuracy that the methodology required, because the methodology's beauty depended on the precision, and the precision was the skill, and the skill was the hands, and the hands were Signy. The palace commission arrived through the circuit's ordinary channels, a message at a village posting house. The particular, handwritten, "Someone wants your services," communication that commissions produced. The message's origin was unusual, the stall palace. The message's content was specific, a collection of ceramics requiring restoration. The collection's significance was noted, personal effects of the late queen, handle with appropriate care. The late queen's ceramics. Signy received the commission with the professional's assessment. The work would be technically demanding, royal collections contained higher quality pieces whose restoration required the methodologies, highest precision and emotionally significant. The pieces belonged to a dead woman whose death was public knowledge and whose death's public knowledge meant the restoration carried weight beyond the ceramic. The assessment was professional. The acceptance was professional. The traveling to the palace was 3 days by cart. The collection was stored in the East Wing, a room adjacent to what had been the Queen's private chambers, and that the adjacency's association with the dead Queen had converted into the particular, sealed. No one enters quality that rooms adjacent to death acquire when the death is unresolved in the living's grief. The room had been sealed for 3 years. The opening was for the mender. The mender entered. 47 pieces, cups, plates, bowls, decorative vessels, the particular, personal, collected over a lifetime quality that the collection carried. Not display pieces used pieces. The cups showed tea stains. The bowls showed the particular, worn. The glaze has thinned quality that daily use produced. These were not a queen's formal collection. These were a woman's daily objects, the things Thyra used, touched, held during the ordinary moments that ordinary objects occupy. The objects carried the ordinary. The ordinary was the grief's container. The grief was why they were broken. The breaking was not the assassination. The breaking was the aftermath, the particular, violent, grief-expressing destruction that Vidar Stahl had performed in the weeks following his wife's death. When the grief exceeded every container the grief was offered, and the exceeding produced the particular, physical, "I will destroy the things she touched" response that men produced when the grief's magnitude required a physical expression, and the physical expression was the breaking, and the breaking was the ceramics, because the ceramics were her daily objects, and the daily objects were the grief's most concentrated containers, because the daily was where the missing was most. acute. The morning tea. The evening bowl, the objects that the routine contained and that the routine's continuation without the person produced the particular, unbearable. The cup is here, and she is not quality that the unbearing's physical expression was the smashing. 47 pieces. Smashed by a grieving king. Stored for 3 years in a sealed room. Now opened for a mender whose methodology was the visible repair of broken things. 47 pieces. A dead queen's daily cups and bowls smashed by a grieving king in the weeks after. Stored for 3 years in a sealed room. Now opened for a mender whose philosophy was, the crack is not erased. The crack is illuminated, gold in the fracture lines. The breaking is part of the history. The history is the beauty. Chapter 2. The workshop was the sealed room opened, ventilated, converted from storage into workspace through the particular, practical, I need light, and a table methodology that Siny applied to every workspace regardless of the workspace's previous function. A table from the storage inventory, light from the window the curtains opened for the first time in 3 years, admitting the northern light that ceramic work required because northern light was consistent, and consistent light was the precision's condition. The kiln, portable, positioned near the window for ventilation, the adhesives, organized by type gold powder, silver compound, the particular, specialized, each one for a specific application array that the methodology required. The work began on a Monday. Signy's process. Assessment first. Each piece examined, the breaks catalogued, the particular, forensic, I am reading the damage quality that the examination produced. The reading was professional, the break patterns revealing the force that produced them, thrown against a wall. Radiating fracture pattern. Dropped, concentric fracture pattern, gripped and crushed, compression fracture pattern. The readings told the breaking story. The story was consistent. Thrown. Every piece. The particular, repetitive, the same force applied to every object quality that the consistency produced. Not accident. Expression. A man throwing 47 objects against walls in the particular. Systematic. I am doing this to every one quality that grief's physical expression produced when the expression was not a single eruption, but a sustained, deliberate, piece-by-piece destruction that the deliberateness made more devastating than randomness, because deliberateness meant the person was choosing to destroy each object individually, and the individually was the grief saying, each one of these was hers. Each one is the absence. Each absence is a throw. The assessment took 3 days. The mending began on Thursday. First piece. A teacup. Blue glaze, the particular, handmade. The potter was skilled quality that the glaze's application revealed. The cup was in 7 pieces thrown hard, the radiating fracture pattern producing the 7 fragments that the 7's assembly required the particular, 3-dimensional puzzle. Each piece has one correct position methodology that ceramic restoration demanded. The assembly was the skill. The gold was the art. The adhesive mixed, applied along the fracture lines with the particular, thin. The line must follow the break precision that the brush required, and that the brush's requirement was Signy's hands, and Signy's hands were the precision. The teacup reformed. 7 pieces becoming one, the cracks visible, the gold tracing each fracture line, the particular, beautiful. The breaking is now the pattern quality that the methodology produced. The cup was not restored to its pre-damaged state. The cup was transformed into a new state, the state that included the breaking and the mending and the gold that connected them. The cup's history was visible, made, used, loved, destroyed, mended, every stage present in the finished object. Siny set the completed cup on the table to cure, returned to the fragments. Second piece. A bowl. And the work continued with the particular, meditative, the hands know what they are doing quality that skilled handwork produced when the skill was sufficient to permit the mind to occupy a different space. Then the hands and the mind's occupation was the workshop's silence, the particular, productive, working alone quality that the silence provided. The silence was interrupted on the 4th day. Not by sound, by presence. The particular, someone is watching quality that presence produced in the watcher's subject, when the watching was sustained enough that the subject's peripheral awareness detected the watching before the subject's direct observation confirmed it. Someone was watching. The watching was coming from the doorway. Siny did not turn immediately. Continued working the bowl's 3rd fragment being positioned. The gold adhesive requiring the particular, uninterrupted, do not move during application stability that the applying demanded. The fragment was placed. The adhesive set, the stability was maintained. Then, Signy turned, a boy, in the doorway. Approximately 6 small for 6, carrying the particular, undersized, the body has not received optimal conditions quality that chronic stress produced in children's physical development. Dark-haired. Standing with the specific, motionless, I am observing quality that the standing communicated, not the fidgeting, shifting. I am a child in a doorway quality that ordinary 6-year-olds produced. The motionless was total. The observing was total. The particular, complete. My entire system is allocated to watching quality of a child whose watching was not casual but comprehensive, and whose comprehensive was the quality that the watching carried. The boy's eyes were on the table. On the fragments, on the completed teacup, the 7-piece to 1 transformation. The gold in the cracks, the particular, visible, the mending is the beauty quality that the completed cup displayed. The boy's eyes were tracking the gold lines, following them the way rivers follow valleys, the path determined by the landscape. The following automatic, the particular, drawn to. The eye cannot resist the line quality that gold and ceramic cracks produced in viewers whose viewing was the particular, aesthetic. I am seeing something that matters quality. Cine assessed. Not the child's identity. Cine did not know the prince from any other palace child. The mender's particular, itinerant. I do not know the residence quality that the itinerancy produced. A boy. Watching. Interested in the gold. The assessment's response was the professionals, continue working. Not a dismissal. The particular, I am doing what I do. You are welcome to watch quality that skilled craftspeople produced for observers whose observing was not interfering, and whose not interfering meant the observing was permitted through the permission's default rather than the permission's grant. The boy was not interfering. The boy could watch. Signy returned to the bowl, applied the adhesive, traced the fracture line. The gold following the break with the particular, slow. This requires patience pace that the tracing demanded. The boy watched from the doorway. The watching continued for approximately 40 minutes. Then the doorway was empty. The boy was gone. The next morning, the doorway again. The boy. Watching. Same position. Same motionless quality, same comprehensive observation directed at the table and the fragments and the gold and the particular repetitive. The mending is happening process that the observation was absorbing. Same duration, approximately 40 minutes. Then, gone. The pattern established across 5 days. The boy's arrivals were consistent mid-morning, the timing suggesting a schedule whose break occurred at mid-morning and whose break the boy was spending in the doorway. Consistent duration. Consistent position. Consistent watching. The consistency was the data. The data said, this child is not casually interested. This child is deeply, structurally. The watching is the primary activity interested in what is happening on this table. Day 6. The boy crossed the threshold. Not into the room 1 step across. The particular, incremental. I am testing whether the inside is safe quality that threshold crossing produced when the crossing was cautious, and the cautious was the child's. And the child's caution was the fortress. And the fortress was permitting 1 step at a time the exiting. 5 days of watching from the doorway. Mid-morning. 40 minutes. Same position. The consistency was the data, not casual interest structural. Day 6. 1 step across the threshold. The fortress permitting the exiting. 1 step at a time. Chapter 3. The nursery staff, noticed on day 8. Hala Strand, the prince's primary attendant, whose function was the management of the boy's daily schedule, and whose management included the tracking of the boy's location during the schedule's various segments, noticed that the mid-morning segment was consistently producing the same location, the East Wing workshop. The noticing produced the reporting. The reporting traveled upward through the household hierarchy until the reporting reached Lord Edvard Brennan, the household manager, whose managing included the particular, sensitive, anything involving the prince category that the managing elevated to the king. The king received the report during an afternoon governance session. The report's content: Prince Sigurd has been visiting the ceramics restoration workshop daily for 8 days. Duration approximately 40 minutes. The visitor does not speak. Chandard, the prince, does not speak. The visitor observes the artisan's work. On day 6, the visitor entered the room. Entered the room. The 3 words carrying the weight that the 3 words context provided. A child who had not voluntarily entered an unfamiliar space in 3 years had entered an unfamiliar space. The entering was the event. The entering's significance exceeded the entering's physical action by the particular, enormous. The body is going somewhere the body has not gone margin that the significance represented. Vidar processed the report with the particular, guarded. I have received reports about progress before quality that 3 years of failed interventions produced an apparent whose hope had been activated, and disappointed by the intervention's reports enough times that the hope's activation now produced the wariness rather than the hope, and the wariness was the hope's scar tissue. The scar tissue said, "Be careful, the report might be another false signal." The false signals have been arriving for 3 years. The signals say progress, and the progress does not produce the word, and the word is the thing, and the thing has not come. Do not interfere. The instruction directed at Brennan. The instruction's content, whatever is happening in the workshop, is happening without intervention. And the without intervention quality may be the quality that is producing. The happening and the producing's condition, the without intervention, must be preserved, because preserving the condition preserves the producing. And the producing is the thing, and the thing must not be disturbed by the particular, institutional. We should manage this interference that the institution's reflexive response to events involving the prince generated. The instruction was the restraint. The restraint was the hardest thing the father had produced in 3 years, harder than the grief, harder than the failed intervention's disappointments, harder than the particular, sustained. My son does not speak weight that the 3 years had been. The restraint was harder because the restraint required the not doing, and the not doing, for a king whose governance was built on the doing, was the opposite of every operational instinct the position had developed. Do nothing. Let the workshop operate. Let the boy visit. Let whatever mechanism the visiting was activating continue activating without the institutional hand reaching in and adjusting the mechanism to the institution's preferred specifications. The mechanism was the mending. Signy's particular. Daily. I am repairing broken things, process visible, unhurried. The gold tracing the fractures with the particular. Patient. The mending takes the time, the mending takes quality that the process's pace communicated. The pace was the mechanism's active ingredient. Not the gold. Not the ceramics. The pace, the particular, slow, nothing is being rushed quality that the pace produced in the workshop's atmosphere, and that the atmosphere's quality was the thing the boy's fortress was responding to. The fortress was built from rush. The assassination was 17 minutes. 17 minutes of rapid, violent. The world is happening too fast quality that the 3-year-old system could not process because the processing required the slow, and the 17 minutes was not slow. The 17 minutes was the fastest thing the child's experience had ever contained, and the fastest had broken the child's processing, and the breaking's protection was the fortress. And the fortress's walls were built from the fast, and the walls, to be penetrated, required the slow. The workshop was slow. The mending was slow. The gold's application was slow. The curing was slow. The particular, comprehensive, everything here operates at a pace the fortress recognizes as safe quality that the slow produced was the safety, and the safety was the mechanism, and the mechanism was working, because the mechanism was the opposite of the thing that built the fortress. Signy did not know this. Signy did not know the boy was the prince, did not know the boy's silence was trauma-produced, did not know the fortress existed or the mechanism was working, or the working was the thing the crown's medical establishment had spent 3 years and considerable resources failing to produce. Signy knew. A boy watches the mending. The boy is quiet. The quiet is the boy's. The mending continues. The not knowing was the mechanism's essential condition. The moment the mender knew the silence was clinical, knew the watching was therapeutic, knew the particular, significant. This child is the prince quality that the knowing would produce the moment the knowing arrived. The mending would become intervention, and the intervention would carry the particular, purposeful, I am doing this for a reason quality that purpose produced, and the purpose's quality would change the atmosphere. And the atmosphere's change would be detectable by the fortress, and the fortress, detecting the change, would recognize the change as the same quality that every previous intervention had carried, and the recognizing would close the door that the not knowing had opened. The not knowing was the mechanism. The ignorance was the medicine. And the medicine was working because the medicine did not know it was medicine. The fortress was built from rush 17 minutes of violence too fast for a 3-year-old to process. The workshop was slow. The gold was slow. The curing was slow. The slow was the opposite of the thing that built the fortress. And the mender didn't know any of this. The not knowing was the essential condition. The ignorance was the medicine, working precisely because it didn't know it was medicine. Chapter 4, Day 14. The boy sat down. Inside the workshop, the threshold long crossed, the interior now accessible, the particular, progressive, each day a step deeper quality that the 14 days had produced. The sitting was on the floor beside the table, at a distance that permitted observation of the work surface from below, the particular, child's eye level. I can see the underside of what you are doing angle that floor sitting provided. The angle was not the adult's angle. The angle was the child's looking up at the mending rather than across at it. The perspective producing a different view of the process, and the different view being the child's own and the own being the important thing, because the own meant the child was constructing his own relationship with the mending, rather than inheriting the adult's. Cine adjusted. Not the work, the awareness, the particular, professional. Someone is closer now quality that the adjustment contained. The adjustment's expression was minimal, a slight change in the work's positioning, the table's surface angled fractionally toward the floor-sitting observer so that the observer's angle received a clearer view. The angling was not acknowledged, was not announced, was the particular, invisible. I am accommodating your presence without drawing attention to the accommodating quality that skilled hosts produced for guests whose comfort was being managed without the managing being performed. Day 16. The boy touched a fragment, not a commissioned piece of practice shard that Cine kept for adhesive testing. The particular, low value, I use this for calibration piece that the practice required, and that the practice piece's presence on the table was standard and the standards. Presence meant the piece was available, and the available was what the boy's hand found when the hand reached, and the reaching was the first physical interaction the boy had produced with the workshop's contents. The touching was exploratory. The particular, careful, I am learning this object's properties quality that children's touching carried when the touching was investigation rather than play. The fingers traced the shard's edge, the broken edge, the fracture line, the specific, sharp. The breaking produced this geometry quality that the edge carried. The tracing was slow, deliberate. The boy's fingers following the fracture line the way the gold followed the fracture line, the parallel visible. The boy's touching replicating the mender's process through the different medium of fingertips, rather than adhesive. Cine watched the touching through peripheral vision. Did not address it directly, the particular, indirect. I see, but I am not making the seeing into an event quality that the indirect provided. The touching was the boy's touching was the boy's event. The event did not require the mender's narration or encouragement or the particular, therapeutic. That's wonderful quality that adults produced for children's developmental milestones, and that the producing converted the milestone from the child's into the adult's, and the converting was the particular. Co-opting. The adult is taking credit quality that co-opting produced, and that the co-opting was the thing the fortress detected and the detecting closed the door against. No narration. No encouragement. The touching happened. The workshop continued. The atmosphere remained the particular, unchanged. Nothing special is happening quality that the atmosphere's unchanged nature depended on, and that the depending was the mechanism, and the mechanism was. Nothing here is about you, child. Everything here is about the mending. The mending is the room's purpose. You are in the room. The room's purpose continues regardless of your presence. The continuing regardless is the safety. The safety is, you are not the project. The mending is the project. You are just here. Day 20. The boy held a piece. Not touched, held. The distinction was the particular. Picked up, the object is in my hand quality that holding produced, and that holding carried the commitment that touching did not, because holding required the sustained engagement that touching's transience did not. The piece was a completed cup, the teacup, from day one, the 7-piece to 1 restoration, the gold in the cracks. The boy held the cup with the particular, careful, both hands. I understand this is fragile quality that the holding communicated. The understanding was the data. The boy understood the cup's history. Understood that the cup had been broken and mended, and that the mending was the gold, and the gold was the beauty, and the beauty was fragile, and the fragile required the care that both hands provided. The boy held the cup, and looked at the gold lines. The looking was the particular, sustained. I am reading this quality that the looking carried reading the cup's history through the gold's geography. Where the lines were thick, the break was severe. Where the lines were thin, the break was minor. Where the lines converged, the breaks intersected. The geography was the damage's map. The map was readable. The boy was reading it. The reading lasted 4 minutes. Then the boy set the cup down gently, the particular, returned with care quality that the returning communicated, and the returning was the reverence. The reverence was, this object matters. This object's history matters. The mattering is why the gold is there, and the gold is why I held it, and the holding was the reading, and the reading was the connection, and the connection was the thing. Day 20, the boy held a completed cup, both hands, understanding the fragility, reading the gold lines where thick, the break was severe, where converging, the breaks intersected, the geography of damage. He held it for 4 minutes, returned it with care. The reverence was the connection, and the connection was the thing. Chapter 5, Day 23. The day the word came. The workshop was operating at its standard pace mid-morning, the northern light consistent. Cinny working on piece 31 of 47, a decorative bowl whose fracture pattern was the most complex in the collection, 13 fragments. The radiating pattern suggesting the throw had been the hardest, the particular, most force. The grief was concentrated here, quality that the hardest throw communicated about the object it was thrown against. The bowl was Thyra's. The bowl, based on its position in the collection and the particular, handmade. The maker's mark is personal quality that the mark on the base carried, had been made by Thyra herself. The queen had made pottery. The queen's own pottery was in the collection. The queen's own pottery had been thrown by the king against a wall, because the queen's own pottery was the most concentrated container of the queen's daily presence, and the most concentrated was the most unbearable, and the most unbearable was the hardest throw. 13 fragments. The assembly was demanding the three-dimensional positioning requiring the particular, spatial. Every piece must align simultaneously, quality that 13 piece. Assemblies demanded because 13 pieces could not be assembled sequentially. Each piece's position was determined by the adjacent. Pieces' positions and the adjacent pieces' positions were determined by their adjacent pieces, and the mutual determination meant the assembly was simultaneous, rather than sequential. The assembly required concentration. The concentration was total. The hands were operating, the mind was the hands. The workshop was the hands and the bowl and the 13 pieces becoming one. The boy was on the floor. Usual position. Watching. The watching had evolved across 23 days from observational to the particular, participatory. I am part of this process quality that sustained watching produced when the watching was consistent enough to convert the watcher from observer to participant. The participation was not physical, the boy did not assist. The participation was attentional, the boy's attention joined the mender's attention, and the joining produced the particular, shared. Two people focused on the same thing, quality that shared attention created, and that shared attention was the most intimate form of connection available to a child who did not speak, because shared attention did not require speech. Shared attention required only the sharing. The sharing was the looking. The looking was the connection. The connection was the thing the fortress had been preventing for 3 years, and the thing the workshop slow had been permitting for 23 days, and the thing that was, on day 23, about to produce its output. The bowl was assembling. The gold was being applied fragment by fragment, fracture line by fracture line. The particular, sequential within simultaneous methodology that the 13 pieces complexity required. Fragment 11. The gold tracing the crack. The brush moving with the hands, particular, automatic. The skill is in the muscle quality that 12 years of practice produced. The brush slipped. The particular, rare, the hand made an error quality that slipping produced the gold line deviating from the fracture line by approximately 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter of deviation. In Signy's methodology, unacceptable. The deviation broke the line's integrity. The line must follow the break. The following was the truth. The deviation was the departure from truth. The departure required correction. Signy reached for the correction tool, a fine-pointed implement designed for the removal of wet adhesive before the setting. The reaching found, the tool was not on the table. The tool was on the floor. Dropped the particular, rolled off the table, the tool found its own way down quality that cylindrical tools produced on flat surfaces. The boy picked it up. From the floor beside him, the tools rolling, having delivered the tool to the boy's proximity, and the proximity producing the picking up, and the picking up producing the offering. The boy held the tool toward Signy. The offering was the particular. Here is the thing you need quality that offering produced functional, helpful. The first directed interaction the boy had initiated with the mender in 23 days of observation. Cinny took the tool. The taking was standard professional, the hands receiving the implement with the particular. Thank you expressed through efficiency quality that tradespeople produced when the thanking was in the continuing rather than the speaking. And the boy, holding the space where the tool had been in his extended hand, looking at the mender whose hands were correcting the 1 millimeter deviation with the tool the boy had provided, opened his mouth. The opening was the particular, preparatory. The system is activating quality that preceded speech, the mouth organizing itself for the production of sound that the mouth had not produced in 3 years, and that the organizing was visible, because the organizing was effortful, and the effort was the particular, muscular. The apparatus is remembering quality that disused vocal systems produced when the systems were reactivating. Siny, the name, spoken from the floor of a workshop by a 6-year-old whose vocal apparatus had been dormant for 3 years, and whose dormancy's interruption produced a voice that was rough and quiet and carried the particular, unused. The sound is new to the speaker quality that the producing communicated the speaker hearing his own voice for the first time in 3 years, and the hearing being part of the producing, and the producing being part of the word, and the word being Signy, not mama, not papa, not any of the standard, expected. The therapeutic literature predicts these first words that the speech therapist's interventions had been designed to elicit. The name of a potter mender. The name of a woman who mended broken things with gold, and who had been mending broken things in a workshop for 23 days while a boy watched, and the watching was the slow, and the slow was the opposite of the fast, and the opposite was the medicine, and the medicine, after 23 days, produced the word. The word was not produced by the mending, the word was produced by the tool. The tool dropped. The boy picked it up. The picking up was the helping. The helping was the first outward directed action, the first time in 3 years the boy's system had produced a movement whose purpose was another person's need rather than the boy's own protection. The fortress's walls were built from self-protection. The helping was the opposite of self-protection. The opposite was the door. The door opened. And the opening produced the word because the word was on the other side of the door, and the door had been closed for 3 years, and the opening was the tool. And the tool was the helping, and the helping was the boy's, and the boy's helping produced the boy's word, and the word was Signy. The workshop held the word. The word hung in the northern light above the fragments, and the gold, and the 31 completed pieces, and the 13-piece bowl that was mid-assembly. The word was small, one name, 3 syllables, spoken quietly from a floor by a voice that was testing whether speaking was survivable. The word was enormous, the first sound from a 3-year fortress. The first evidence that the fortress contained a voice, and the voice was intact, and the intact was the miracle that the word's production represented. Siny turned from the bowl, looked at the boy, at the face that was looking back, the particular. I said it, I heard it. The word is in the room quality that the face carried. Not triumph, not relief. The particular, tentative, was that all-right quality that first words after long silences produced when the speaker was uncertain whether the word's production was the correct thing to have done, and the uncertainty required the listener's response to confirm that the production was correct. The response was the particular, professional, the work continues quality that Signy's methodology produced for every event the workshop contained. The response was a nod. A small, simple, the acknowledgement is here quality. Not the dramatic, tears and celebration, the milestone is being performed response that dramatic moments were supposed to produce. A nod. The nod's content. I heard you. The hearing is sufficient. The word is received. The receiving is the response. The response does not make the word into an event. The response makes the word into a normal thing that happened in a normal workshop during a normal morning. The normal is the safety. The safety is the response. The response is the nod. The boy's face settled. The tentative resolved into the particular. The response confirmed the production quality that settling produced. The word was all right. The word was received. The word was normal. The normal meant another word might be possible. The possibility was the door staying open. The door stayed open because the nod said, the door is welcome to stay open. The door's staying is not an event. The door's staying is just the door. The tool rolled off the table. The boy picked it up. Offered it. The first outward directed action in 3 years helping someone else rather than protecting himself. The fortress's walls were built from self-protection. The helping was the door. The door opened. And the word came through. Signy. 3 syllables from a 3-year silence. The response was a nod. Not celebration. Normal. Because normal was the safety. and the safety was why another word might follow. Chapter 6. The reporting of the word traveled through the palace hierarchy in approximately 90 minutes. Not through Siny did not report, because Siny did not know the word's significance, because Siny did not know the boy's history. Through Hala Strand, who had been monitoring the workshop from the corridor per the king's instruction, and whose monitoring had placed her within auditory range of the workshop, and whose auditory range had received the word, and whose receiving produced the particular, professional, immediate. I am delivering this now response that the receiving generated. The king received the word in the governance wing. The receiving was not the report's content was informational. The receiving was the impact, the particular, physical, 3 years of waiting, ending in a name quality that the impact produced in a man whose waiting had been sustained through failed interventions and scar tissue hope. And the particular, daily. My son did not speak today disappointment that 3 years of daily disappointment had accumulated, and that the accumulation's weight was the specific weight that the word Siny, a name he did not recognize, a person he had not met, lifted. Not eliminated. Lifted, the weight remained. The word reduced the weight's load-bearing demand from total to manageable, and the manageable was the gift, and the gift was. My son spoke. My son spoke a word. My son's first word in 3 years is the name of a woman I do not know who is mending my dead wife's pottery in a room I smashed the pottery in, and the word the particular, indirect. The word came through the mending quality that the word's origin communicated was not produced by the interventions I funded or the therapists I engaged. The word was produced by a potter mender's workshop, and a dropped tool, and the particular, slow, the opposite of the fast quality that the workshop provided, and that the providing was the medicine, and the medicine was the not knowing, and the not knowing was the condition, and the condition could not be replicated by any institution, because institutions know what they are doing, and the not knowing was the mechanism. The king went to the workshop, not immediately the following morning. The restraint holding, do not interfere, but the restraint modifying, observe. The particular, I need to see the person whose name my son spoke quality that the modifying carried not intervention but witnessing. The seeing of the thing the word came from. The workshop at mid-morning. Northern light. The mender at the table piece 32, a plate. The gold being applied with the particular, precise, the line follows the break quality that the methodology produced. The boy on the floor. Usual position. Watching. The watching containing. Now, the word that had been spoken yesterday, and that the speaking had opened, and the opening had not closed, because the not had kept the opening open, and the keeping was the atmosphere's unchanged quality, nothing special happened. The word was normal. The normal continued. Vidar stood in the corridor, not the doorway, the corridor, the particular. I am further back than the boy was quality that the distance provided. The distance was the restraint's spatial expression. The distance said, I am observing without entering. The entering would change the atmosphere. The changing would be the interference. The interference must not occur. From the corridor's distance, the king observed a woman mending his dead wife's pottery, his son on the floor beside her. The particular, peaceful, 2 people in a room with broken things quality that the observing presented. The peaceful was the thing, the specific quality that 3 years of therapeutic interventions had not produced, and that a potter mender's workshop had produced through the particular, unintentional, I did not know I was doing this quality that the producing carried. The quality was visible and the boy's posture relaxed, the watching carrying the engaged rather than the vigilant quality, the particular, present. I am here, and the here is safe quality that the posture communicated, and that the communicating was the fortress's modification, not dismantled. Modified, the fortress now had a door, and the door was open, and the open was the workshop, and the workshop was the woman, and the woman's name was the word, and the word was Siny. The king watched for 12 minutes, did not enter, did not speak, watched a woman mend broken things with gold while his son sat on the floor beside her in the particular, peaceful. The fortress has a door quality that the watching contained. Then the king left. Returned to the governance wing. Sat at the desk. And the sitting was not governance. The sitting was the particular. Processing. My son spoke quality that the processing required the sitting to contain. Because the processing was large, and the large required the containing. And the containing was the sitting, and the sitting was the king alone at his desk with the word in his chest, and the word was a name he did not. No, and the name was attached to a woman who mended broken things, and the woman's mending had reached his son, and the reaching was the miracle. And the miracle was the gold, and the gold was in the cracks, and the cracks were where the light got in. 12 minutes of watching from the corridor. Not entering the restraint holding. A woman mending his dead wife's pottery. His son on the floor beside her, peaceful, the fortress modified, not dismantled, but doorway opened. The king returned to his desk and sat with the word in his chest. The miracle was the gold. The gold was in the cracks. The cracks were where the light got in. Epilogue. 1 year later, Sigurd spoke in sentences now. Not fluently, the rebuilding was ongoing, the vocabulary constructing itself through the particular, daily, word-by-word accumulation that language acquisition followed when the acquisition was restarting rather than initiating. The sentences were short, practical, carrying the mender's particular, object-oriented, this piece goes here quality that the workshop had imprinted on the rebuilding's vocabulary, because the workshop was where the rebuilding occurred and the occurring's environment shaped the occurring's output. The second word spoken on day 25, 2 days after the first was gold. The third was broken. The fourth was fix. The vocabulary's first 4 words: Siny, gold, broken, fix. The autobiography of a recovery written in the sequence of its words: the person, the material, the condition, the response. The 4 words were the recovery's thesis. The thesis said, a person used gold to fix the broken. The king met Siny on day 30. Not in the workshop, in the corridor where the meeting's particular, accidental, I was observing and was observed quality produced the encounter that the restraint had been preventing, and that the preventing's limit, reached at day 30, no longer prevented. The meeting was brief. 2 sentences from the king: you are the person my son spoke to. Thank you. The 2 sentences carrying the 3 years' weight compressed, insufficient. The particular language cannot carry this quality that the sentences produced when the sentence's content was a father's gratitude for the ending of a 3-year silence, and the ending's gratitude exceeded every word the language contained. Signy's response: he spoke because the workshop is slow. The response carrying the mender's particular, professional: I understand what happened quality that the understanding produced, not the clinical understanding that the speech therapist's training provided, not the developmental understanding that the psychologist's frameworks generated. The practical understanding of a person who mended broken things, and who understood, through the mending's daily practice, that broken things require the slow. The fast breaks. The slow mends. The workshop is slow. The boy required the slow. The slow produced the word. The boy required the slow. 5 words containing the recovery's mechanism, stripped of clinical language, stripped of therapeutic framework, delivered in the mender's particular, tradesperson's. I work with my hands quality that the delivering carried. The mechanism was the slow. The mechanism was understood by the person whose hands practiced the slow daily, and whose daily practice was the mechanism's expression, and whose expression was, the slow is not a technique. The slow is a quality. The quality is the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the medicine. The medicine works because the medicine does not know it is medicine. The mending of the 47 pieces was completed in week 8. Each piece restored the cracks visible, the gold tracing each fracture line. The particular, comprehensive, every piece tells its history quality that the completed collection displayed. The collection was reinstalled in the room adjacent to the Queen's former chambers, not sealed. Open. The opening was the King's decision. The room would not be sealed again. The room would contain the collection. The collection would be visible. The visibility would be the history. The history was made, used, loved, destroyed, mended, every stage present. Every stage honored, the destroying not concealed, the mending not invisible, the gold in the cracks. Siny remained, not contracted. The contract was the 8 weeks. The 8 weeks were complete. The completion concluded the professional engagement. Remained through the particular, organic, the boy needs the slow quality that the remaining's reason provided, and that the providing was not professional but personal, and the personal was the reason. The workshop continued, not the Queen's ceramics, which were completed. New work. The palace's ceramics, the staff's ceramics, the particular, ongoing, broken things are always arriving supply that daily life produced, and that the supplies producing meant the workshop had purpose beyond the original commission. And the purposes beyond meant the workshop continued, and the continuing was the slow, and the slow was what the boy required. The relationship between the king and the mender grew through the collection. Through the evenings when the collections room was open, and the room contained the king and the mender and the boy and the 47 pieces whose gold-traced histories were the room's content, and the room's content was the shared experience, the particular. 3 people in a room with mended things quality that the sharing produced. The room was Thyra's. The objects were Thyra's. The mending was Signy's. The breaking was Vidar's. The watching was Sigurd's. Every person's contribution was present in the room, and the room held all of them, and the holding was the capacity, and the capacity was sufficient. Vidar's declaration was not grand, was delivered in the workshop where the real things happened, where the mechanism operated, where the slow was the atmosphere and the atmosphere was the truth. The declaration was the mender's language rather than the king's. I am broken. You are the gold. The simplicity was the precision 2 sentences containing the relationship's complete architecture. The broken was the 3 years, and the grief and the throwing of pottery, and the particular, sustained. I have not been whole quality that the broken carried. The gold was the mending, not the restoration to the pre-damaged state rivable repair. The lie, but the transformation into the new state that included the damage and the mending and the beauty that the damage plus mending produced. I am not here to make the cracks invisible. Signy's response. Carrying the methodology's conviction, the particular, professional, this is what I believe quality that the conviction carried. I am here to make the cracks beautiful. The cracks are yours. The beauty is what I add. The adding does not erase the cracks. The adding illuminates them. The illumination is the truth. The truth is the gold. Sigurd was on the floor between them, drawing the particular, developmental. The speech is rebuilding, and the drawing is the supplement quality that the drawing provided while the vocabulary was still constructing. The drawing was a cup with gold lines, the lines traced carefully the boy's particular. Precise. He learned this from watching quality visible in the line's accuracy. The cup in the drawing was broken and mended. The broken was visible. The gold was visible. The beauty was visible. The boy held up the drawing. The showing was the offering, the particular. I made this, and I want you to see quality that showing produced in children whose showing was the trust. And the trust was the connection, and the connection was the word that started everything. The showing was directed at both adults, simultaneously the particular. I am showing both of you quality that the simultaneously communicated. Both. The boy's world contained both. The both was the completeness. Pretty, the boy observed. The word delivered with the particular. Matter of fact, this is my assessment quality that the delivering carried. The assessment was the drawings. The assessment was also the rooms. The assessment was also the 2 people the drawing was being shown to, and the 2 peoples being shown to was the boy's assessment scope. The gold is pretty. The mending is pretty. The people who mend things are pretty. The pretty is the truth, and the truth is the gold, and the gold is in the cracks, and the cracks are where the light gets in. He declared in the workshop's language, I am broken. You are the gold. She answered in the methodology's conviction, I'm not here to make the cracks invisible. I'm here to make them beautiful. Between them, a boy held up a drawing of a gold-lined cup. 1 word. Pretty. The assessment of the drawing. The room. The people. The truth. The gold in the cracks where the light gets in. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this story. If you liked it, feel free to check out our other videos or YouTube channels where you can find more interesting stories. Your feedback in the comments means a lot to us.